Evening, and this is our very first virtual reception. Hopefully y'all have your drinks ready. Actually, I left mine downstairs, so just have to wait till I'm done. So the show is Discovering Light. There's 3 artists here. We've got 2 painters and a photographer. Patricia Danson is our photographer, and Keith Willis and myself, Lisa Carr, are painters. Bear with us as this is our first virtual reception. So what we'd like to do is we want this to be interactive. We don't want to just be like a monologue. We'd like dialogue and questions. If a lot of people start joining, if this gets to be a lot of people, the best way we've figured to ask questions is to do the raise your hand feature. Although I can't exactly tell you how to do that because I don't see it on my screen. Otherwise, you could put a comment in chat. People have been able to see chat comments. As we go through this show, just the format, I'll just tell you about what the show is about, and then each of the artists is going to have some time to have the floor. We'll go through, like, if you have individual questions about a specific piece, you can do that and ask. And then at the end, we'll have just kind of open general questions and answers for everybody. So just a little bit about the theme, Discovering Light, and why we chose that topic. We really wanted this show to focus on something positive and uplifting. This year there's been so many challenges out there, crises, uncertainty, despair, a lot of feelings of anxiety, and that isolation that we felt not only personally and on individual level, but really universally. Everybody has had quite a crazy year. So just want to remind to, not give up hope. There's light at the end of the tunnel. We want to focus and remind ourselves that things will get better as we go through and meet these various challenges. So as the 3 of us started pulling our pieces together for the show, we found this common element of light used in our pieces and our work. So using light as a symbol of positivity, we want people to focus on that. And you can, take notice as you're looking through these images, how light really can't be shut out. There's, even in the most total darkness, you see a little light shining through. You can't stop it. It helps, define shapes and images and edges. It guides our eyes and allows us to see color. So we hope that you are able to discover light in our pieces as you view through these, as we scroll through these today. We're going to open the floor to painter Keith Willis. I'm going to turn over the controls to Patricia, and she's going to go through the website, and we'll go through Keith's images, and he'll give a chance to speak about his work and ask questions. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Patricia here. Stop sharing. Oops, I got to use the right mouse.
Okay.
And we have.
Okay, can you see magenta sunset?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah. Well, I can see it below there. Ready?
Take it away. Yeah.
Ready? Thanks, Lisa. My name's Keith Willis. I'm a realistic artist. I base my art in realism mainly. Have to forgive me, I'm not much of a public speaker, but I'll do the best that I can. So focusing on realism, my whole idea is to bring things to life as much as possible on the canvas, and most of my work is very colorful. There's a lot of light and shadow, as Lisa was describing. I use photos to base my work on, some of my own and some of them that I pull off of the internet, which are basically non-copyrighted photos that photographers put up there. And I use that as the inspiration for what to do paintings of. And spend a lot of time trying to come up with the right kinds of composition which would make a good painting, which would be catch your attention somewhat. And I don't feel any kind of limit in terms of what I want to focus my painting on, whether, you know, I like to switch around a lot. So I'll paint figurative one day and then a portrait one day and then maybe a landscape. You know, I don't want to just be stuck with one thing because it's a little boring for me. So, and it's more like, you know, a lot of times it's like a kind of a study or something. I want to look at, well, let me try to paint a horse, or I want to do this kind of painting or that. And I look for something which is related to that, which is appealing to me and which I might think is a good painting. Other than that, yeah, it's quite an involving process on my part. It can take anywhere from 60 to 100 hours to produce a painting, including drawing and laying it out and all that. And it's a study too. I learn a lot as I'm going along. I'm always trying to learn more. And I guess we want to go through the basic paintings now, Lisa. Are they up there? I don't see them.
Yeah.
They're up. Yep.
Okay,
So the first
good.
one was your that was showing on previously was the
Okay, the first,
sunset.
yeah, the first painting is Magenta Sunset, which is a kind of a, you know, I had a canvas which had a little defect in it, so I had to find something to do with it. So I said, well, I'll do a sunset, but I didn't want to do anything too complicated. But this one was rather interesting because of the color. It was really kind of the magenta, kind of purplish color was kind of hard to actually get. The next painting is Girl in the Hat, which is, you know, one of my, I like to do portraits and figurative things now and then. And I don't know what else to say about it. So I pulled that picture off the web to do. I changed the background from what it was. The next painting is the Boathouse Row on the street side. From a photo I took back in 2014, and I thought about it for a long time before I actually made it into a painting. It actually turned out pretty well from my point of view. The next painting is what I called Camel Girl. Is another painting, a photo I pulled off the web. I changed the background a lot. What attracted me to this was obviously the dress color and the headscarf and just the position of the girl. And obviously, you know, if they have a nice look on their face or something, which is attractive to me. I actually had to buy a specific paint color to get that color on the dress because I didn't have anything that I could actually get that tone. So I actually had to buy a specific paint tube for that. The next painting is the cat. I pulled off of a website called paintmyphoto.com. So somebody actually put up the photo wanting someone to paint it. I like the cat in relation to the flowers and the sniffing the flowers and looking at the camera. It was just really kind of fun. And the next painting is the wave in time. Something I debated doing for quite some time is a picture I pulled off the web. You know, as you're painting it, it's quite large. It's 36 inches, I believe, wide. And it's like you're painting an abstract almost. And one of the things you're thinking of while you're doing it is, you know, what are you looking at? And water actually does quite a lot of interesting things because this is actually from an actual photo. So just to, as you're painting, you realize, wow, that's just so wild. And you don't know where, you know, it's like an abstract. The other one is the boat is a tall ship in, what is that, in Stockholm. It's a picture from somebody who took a picture in Stockholm. What drew me to that is I sort of wanted to do a painting of a boat in a harbor, so I started looking for boats in a harbor. This photo showed up and I saw the sky, and this is what drew me to the painting, was wanting to do the sky. And it was fairly complicated, it's sort of like a pandemic painting, so I had plenty of time to do it. So I was like, okay, I can do this. I got plenty of time on my hands. And, it was actually quite a complicated piece of work. It's actually a historical ship. It was built in 1988 or 1888 or something like that. So it's actually quite a little bit of history to that particular ship. But it was a bit of work doing that. And sorry you can't actually see it in person, but because it's more interesting to me always to see the paintings in person than just photos.
Keith, we have a question. Where did you study?
I'm mainly a self-study, self-taught artist. I've taken, I took a high school class when I was in high school, and I think I took one course in college, but it didn't really teach me much. So I got some, cues in drawing and stuff, but mostly it's self-taught. So other than that, I don't know, I kind of learn from what, whenever I need to learn something, I go to the internet and see if I can figure it out, or I learn as, like I say, it's a learning process while I'm painting. Kind of a natural talent, I suppose you could say. Anything else? And that's most of what I have to say, but unless somebody has another question.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
This is Cheryl, and you have an awful lot of detail in your paintings, and I was wondering, do you use a really tiny brush, or how do you get all those lines straight?
Yeah, that was actually the lines on the ship was, it was one of those things, well, how am I going to do that? Because I had to do the sky and I had to do the cross beams in the town and all this stuff. And so some of the last things I had to do was the lines. And obviously you can't just make a line like that. And so I actually had to basically sort of draw over the paint with the, sort of like a ruler, and then paint over that, sort of paint the line really carefully, obviously, because, you're using black over the sky and you don't want to, it's like hold your breath, and it was a bit of, it was,
Wow.
Yeah, it was a little difficult.
It takes a lot of courage, I would think, to do that.
Yeah, yeah, it was, it's one of those things like, how am I going to do that or whatever, and so I had to sort of, think about how I was going to go about it. But you work from the top down, top of the rigging down to the bottom of the rigging, and hopefully your lines will all sort of match up as you go along. But
I would add that it's not only lines, it's perspective, and maybe that comes to you naturally, but I would think that's a challenge to get the right perspective.
In what sense? In what sense? When you say perspective, in what sense do you mean exactly?
Oh, I don't know if I know how to explain it since I'm not a painter, but I figured that somebody could be good at drawing lines, but it may not be believable in terms of the realism if they're not at the right angle, and
all that stuff comes into play when when you're doing a painting in terms of the color and what you're painting first, and how to separate the background from the foreground. Obviously, the farther back it goes to the background, the less detail you want to expose per se, and the closer you get, the more detailed it becomes. Yeah,
it's amazing.
Hard to explain how that works sometimes.
I think that the detail is almost unbelievable.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It really is. It's hard to discern if it's a painting or a photograph.
Yeah, a lot of people say, oh, that looks just like a photograph. And to me, I don't really want it to look like a photograph, and I'm not trying to make it look like a photograph. And it sort of has has that feeling of realism of a photograph, but as a painting, it always looks a little different than a photograph when you see it.
A lot of work.
I think all the paintings are wonderful, although the Wave in Time really has me the most mesmerized, how you were able to go from a photograph, and it's just, it's beautiful, and all the detail.
Water by its nature is clear. It has no color, but look at all the color that's in there.
Yes,
and there's a lot of depth as well.
All the reflections that are caught. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, glad you like that. Now we're going to shoot to the next artist and then come back for questions, or?
No. Now I got to follow up on top of Keith. Oh boy. So again, I'm Lisa Carr. I'm an abstract painter. I work primarily in acrylic. My works are a combination of planned and unplanned. I tend to work in layers. So I might have an initial idea of maybe a color combination I'd like to play with, or maybe I've been inspired by a rusty piece of equipment or bark on a tree. I love texture. So I might start from one place and the paintings take a completely different turn as I'm working through the layers. So, you know, a lot of my inspiration does come from things that are weathered and exposed to the elements over time. I find like something that's pristine and perfect doesn't have as much interest to me. If I find something that has life, that's, you know, it's got marks and dents, and, you know, just like us, as we go through life, we get, you know, kind of beat up, and it's the character that gets built in a piece. So, you know, I find the more layers and life that things have had, the more interest it holds to me. So, you know, some of my paintings, as far as the length of time that I spend on them, they're very different. Some of them will happen very quickly, but more often I'll do something quick and I just see it as really a layer. That's just the first layer. And then I'll sit with it for a while and say, okay, what's next? And, you know, what do I want to decide to leave behind for that viewer? As we, you know, as I start building these layers, maybe I just want to show a little bit of that initial one, and, you know, just keep building over time. You can keep scrolling through this, Patricia. So,
Okay.
yeah, I'm not speaking to any specific piece. If somebody does have a question as you go along, but, you know, one of my challenges to me is like, when's a piece done? So, you know, that is kind of hard. I do like to get feedback from people too, when they see things, because I don't always have an intention of what it's supposed to be, but people will tell me something they see, and then it's kind of exciting. So they're like, oh, okay, I see what you're seeing. It's like looking faces in the clouds. You know, our minds are always wired to kind of make sense of abstract and unknown. You know, you're always trying to figure out what am I looking at. So when people do tell me that they see certain things, I find that pretty exciting. And then I always see that then with what they see when they point it out to me.
In the titling of your work, when does that always happen? Like when you're done or during the process of making the painting?
I will say 95% of the time it's when I'm done, because I do kind of like to roll, you know, go with the flow with these abstract pieces. I don't quite know when they're done, so I don't know what the end result is going to be. You know, this one, for instance, Lichen What I See. I did take a photo of this rock up at my aunt's house up in Connecticut, and it had a ton of lichen on it. And so I posted a photo called I'm Liking What I See. And then that, you know, photo inspired me to make a piece that looked like a close-up of a tree with a bunch of lichen on it. So, you know, in that case, I kind of had an idea of where I was going. But a lot of times it's more after the fact, you know, looking back and you know, why do I like it? What does it remind me of? My sister actually helps me a lot too in naming the pieces. So, you know, we'll get together and have a glass of wine and, you know, start, what do we see in that piece? And so, yeah. And sometimes I don't necessarily come up with a name. So I'll just, like this one, for instance, I just RGB for, not for Ruth Gate, Bader Ginsburg. It's like a, you know, red, green, blue abstract. So,
Lisa, how many layers would you typically have? I mean, some of them look like just a few, and some look like a huge number of different shades.
It really depends on how long it takes me to be satisfied with the piece. Some can be very thin. Like sometimes I'll work with washes and throw paint at something to, you know, add to the colors and stuff. Some of them, sometimes I work thicker or with spackle and build it up really so that I can carve texture and stuff. So it really varies. I mean, some pieces really I feel like are not even ever done. I have some pieces I've been working on for many years that's just like, I don't like it yet. So I'll put it off to the side, and then I'll pull it back out and I'll throw another layer on it. So it's hard to tell, you know.
Do you start out with a color scheme? I've noticed that some of your pieces have like a complementary color scheme and others seem more analogous. I don't know if you choose one ahead of time.
Yeah, so sometimes I have some specific colors that I know I want to work with. Like I'll see a couple trees next to each other of different colors that I just love the way that they've set each other off. And I'm like, ooh, I want to play with that pink and a burgundy or something. And I'll start playing with those colors. But, you know, I've learned, you had mentioned about a lot of them are complementary colors. I do love when one color is offset on another. The further apart they are in nature, or, you know, like a green versus a red, it's just going to contrast so much that it's just going to pop. Versus other times I want to be more peaceful, and then I try to work with colors that are in the same kind of family. So it just depends on what I want to do. I do like to do opposite on opposite on opposite though, because it does kind of create these crazy images that result.
What about the orientation of each of the paintings? Do they always stay the way you began them?
No, I don't have a good example ready to show you right now, but a lot of times, yeah, I mean, once I'm done with a piece, that's the first thing I do is I set it one way, keep it for a while, turn it 90 degrees, 45 degrees, 90 degrees, and then another 90, and I just keep rotating it in all four directions till I figure out which way is it happy. But really, if somebody likes it in an opposite direction, I have no problem with, like, you know, if the viewer likes it in a different orientation, mine can work in a lot of different ways. It doesn't necessarily have an up and down or right way.
Like the idea of somebody seeing something in it that you may not have seen initially.
Yep. When I started, I just actually named them Abstract 1, Abstract 2, Abstract 3. I didn't start naming them really until I started kind of building an inventory, and it was an inventory issue. I'm like, what's 1, what's 2, what's 3? So I had to put names to them just to keep myself sane and keep track of them. But you know, ultimately, it is the viewer that makes that connection with the piece. So, you know, I don't want to tell people what it is. That's why even when I name them, when I do have names for them, I don't necessarily want to say what I see. I'd like people to discover their own, like, you know, what it is they see, what makes it special to them, what drew them to that image.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Felisa?
I got at least one question, Lisa, on the painting. I lost it already now.
I'll go through quickly, Keith. Here, take a look.
The painting Reverberation Rumination. How did you get the texture on that?
So I used a palette knife in this case, and really I just started with 3 colors. It was a blue, a white, and I think it was like sap green or something. And that's all. I just wanted to keep the palette simple and just use the knife and just started working in one direction. And, you know, again, I didn't have a plan for it to turn out necessarily like this. It was a lot of experimentation and just really one palette knife I used on this one.
I really like the texture on that.
Thank you. It does definitely remind me of like being in Colorado, or like a aerial view of water or mountains.
Stratified rock.
Yeah.
Oh, I see reflections. I see it as boats reflected in the water.
Nice.
Everybody sees something different.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's neat.
It's interesting that Keith is commenting on this one, because when I was looking through these, this is the one that reminded me of Keith's, the one with the wave. And there was, to me, they kind of resonated with each other, the color, the scheme, the water.
Mm-hmm.
And I was intrigued with the both of you artists, how you created this texture with the paint. And, you know, it's wonderful that we have Zoom, but it's unfortunate, like I can't see this. I can't really see the texture, but, you know, I can kind of get some illumination of it with the text, the shadowing a little bit. And I just found it interesting that Keith commented on this picture that I had kind of connected to him. Just
that is interesting. Patricia, can you do the view full size and zoom in a little bit just so you can kind of go? I think you can, maybe not.
You can pinch it out, like spread your fingers and go really close if you want.
Yeah, you can really see the brushstrokes in yours, Lisa. Whereas Keith's, the brushstrokes really aren't there. It does look more like a photograph, but where almost like those crests of the waves are, you can kind of see a little edging. So it's just interesting, those two.
Mm-hmm.
They're my favorites so far.
I actually made that correlation the other day. I thought it looked like her painting looked like a wave.
You sure did. He asked me if that was a wave.
Yeah, it was like a wave.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
This is Nancy. I think it's the one As Years Go By. It's red with the blue patches in it.
Other way, Patricia, the other way.
Maybe the other way. I don't know.
One more.
That one.
One more. There you go.
One more?
Go back.
Nope, too
You
far.
had it.
Oh,
It was
Go
before
back.
the green one.
yes.
That one.
Okay. Sorry.
I noticed in one of your other paintings that you have some print, you know, you've got collage effect. And I can't quite tell with this. Are they blue? Did you do some collage effect in this one?
Everything is paint in these images that I have. So I did initially paint this with a lot of blues and some white paint. And there was a little bit of, I even think I had some magenta in that kind of first layer. And you know, again, I use the palette knife a lot. So kind of blending those colors on the canvas itself, it kind of looks like a photograph. I have a lot of my paintings that are like that. I'll be like, it gives me chills sometimes because I'll see like people on a subway or something. Like it's just like, it gets insane. But you can see like that blue, that kind of blurred, it looks like a blurred photo or something. But it's just paint.
Okay.
And then in this case, I took pieces of tape and taped off little sections all over, and then came back in with the browns and the reds and the, you know, some ochre a little bit here and there. And I may even use some sand in this one to kind of make that top layer, and then peeling off the tape to reveal the pieces below. Kind of reminds me of a broken mirror a little bit. But it's just, to me, as years go by, there's something going back in the background, like the under layers, you know, like the previous life that it had is going by. So that's kind of how I came up with this title on this one.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Lisa? Hearing none, I will move on to mine. So I'm the photographer. I'm Patricia Danson. Photography means drawing with light. So like all photographers, I'm seeking out good light. But I'm also very much drawn to line and structure, to color and pattern, and story and sort of sense of place. In the images in this show, I've got two sets of images from two places, and sense of place is very important. The first set is Morocco. And Morocco really is an ancient culture that's really sort of edging into modernity. And I think that's sort of what I was sensing when I was there and capturing in my images. So starting off with this one, which is called Sweeper in the Mosque, what drew me was the light, that it's backlit so that the woman is silhouetted against the door and the windows, the light is streaming in and casting a reflection of those patterns on the highly polished marble floor. And the very tiny size of the woman relative to the building, I think gives a sense of the scale of this mosque. It's in Casablanca, the Hassan II Mosque, and it is the second largest mosque in the world, so it is huge. And this is just a tiny corner of it.
What's the name of that mosque?
Hassan II Mosque, and it was actually built in the 1990s, intentionally to be the second biggest mosque, but they didn't want to upscale the biggest mosque in Mecca.
Right, the Grand Mosque.
I was drawn by the light at sunset in this port city on the Atlantic coast. It's called Essaouira. And so we're looking directly into the sun out to the west over the Atlantic, but the sun is hidden behind the sort of fortress, and the lines of that fortress structure, I felt it drew my eye into the image, and then the leading lines of the blue boat in the foreground sort of lead the eye in from the foreground. And the blue, I like the contrast against the yellow of the sky. And then a bit hard to see, but off in the lower right, there are some more boats and a man. So a sense of this is still a port city where fishermen do ply their trade, even as it has this old history to it. This is called Bars. I was drawn by the view through the window into the house, into the interior, with the series of arches and the curtains pulled aside to let the viewer see what into the next rooms. Very simple stone floor and a touch of color in the rug. But then the bars on the window and the woman turning away really hinting at the real restrictions and hiddenness of women in traditional Moroccan culture. Another environmental portrait, this one I called Man Reading. It's a man just seated reading, I don't know what, but at that big mosque, the Hassan II Mosque. This is outside, and I like the way he was framed in the verticals of the marble structure and the lines of the sort of slight stairs, and then contrasted with the pattern of the traditional tile work, which is a very traditional Moroccan tile work. Now a few of contemporary Moroccan life, but applying the traditional trades. This is a tannery in Marrakesh. And in this courtyard, there are these stone vats that are filled with dyes of different colors. And the hides are right out, you can see along the side, the balcony to the right. And then they're dipped into the vats to get the different colors and then made into clothing or bags, whatever it is. But there are people living in these adobe structures, which just blew my mind because the smell was horrific. These are, you know, hides that are drying out. But I like just the image of the courtyard and the sort of, it all focuses in on that center place where they're being dyed. Another traditional craft is rug weaving, and it's a woman's craft. The women do all the weaving. This was actually taken in an upstairs room of a rug shop, and these two women are seated there, you can see, with their scarves on, hand weaving this rug in a traditional pattern. And then the women do all the weaving, and then downstairs the men do the selling. But I liked the contrast of the color and then the vertical lines, and then just the hint of the women in the background. Markets are a big deal in Morocco with traditional wares and more modern wares. This is a spice shop. These are huge piles of different spices and a very hip young man, very coolly ready to serve. In color, the color was just too busy, too distracting. And so I converted it to black and white to simplify it a bit and sort of emphasize the structures and the contrast of the the different spices. This is another one that in color was just too busy for my eye. It's called Different Worlds, and what I was trying to capture here was the truly different worlds of different centuries in Morocco that I saw in this view. So I'm up in a sort of fortress built of this adobe mud, and in the passageway that we walked up to get to the fortress, you can see there's a vendor selling rugs and clothing, but then we're looking out over the village that's made in this very traditional adobe mud. It's actually a sort of fortress village. It was a trading village that's just on the edge of the desert. And that's in a very old Berber style of architecture. So going back to around 12th, 14th century. And then looking across the dried out Wadi River, there is the more modern town, the other side in the hills. So it was 3 different centuries sort of layered and visible through this gap in the building, but just too busy in color. So I converted to black and white. And then finally, another different angle on the boats at Essaouira, the different curves of the boats and the buildings in the background. So moving on from, oh, there's one more here. These are the arches in the mosque, and you can really get a sense of the scale of that mosque we saw in the first image. So moving now just to a quick tour of Ellis Island. Ellis Island, as I'm sure you know, was the place where many, I think 12 million immigrants landed in Ellis Island between 1890 and 1924. And this hospital was used to treat people who came with diseases. It was finally closed in the 1950s, and it's in a real state of disrepair with the, you know, the paint peeling and basically everything rotting. But it is under the care of the Save Ellis Island Foundation, and they're trying to get it back to just enough safety so they give hard hat tours. And about a decade ago, they invited a street artist, a French street artist who just goes by the name JR, to put up some poster art that is based on photographs of actual immigrants from Eastern Europe. And that's what you see here as the silhouettes at the window. So where you see humans in these images, they are, for the most part, the posters put up by JR. So here I'm looking out of the room through the posters he put up, the silhouettes he put up, and then to see the Statue of Liberty, which is visible from several of the windows. But so that has some interest from the exterior. The interior is mostly just very grungy, dilapidated, peeling walls, peeling paint on doors. The only furnishing left are some plumbing fixtures. You can see the heating element and the basin and a stool and some light fixtures. So shooting in there is quite challenging, sort of finding a point of focus. Also, the lighting is very limited. And so, because it's just natural light coming in through the doors and the windows. So all of these were shot using what's called HDR, high dynamic range technique, where you bracket 3 images of the same thing. You're on a tripod and you vary the exposure by 1.5 or 2 stops. So you get one that gives you the detail in the dark areas, one that gives you the detail in the highlights, and then one that gives you the middle tones, and then the software that puts those together. So all of these use that HDR technique. This is one of JR's images. This is just, I happened to be lucky and saw a man coming up the stairway, but it's typical of the images of sort of looking through doors, through windows. That's kind of what you see. And stairways and boarded up windows. So it's a really nice grungy place, but kind of finding focal points and finding a composition is what the challenge is. Here you can really see the decay of the wood as well as the peeling off the paint.
Lots of good texture.
Yeah, it's amazing, amazing texture.
Yeah, it looks like Lisa would find much inspiration there.
Yes, I'd be zooming in on certain things. And
and I do have some that are zoomed in on textures on my website. So it's a selection of the images I took. There are more that are just the texture on the website.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are the two sets. Any questions? Comments?
I just have a quick question about the spices in the market in Morocco. The mounds of the spices that have different colored spots on them. Are those different spices mixed in, and do you get a little bit of everything, or how do they do that?
You know, I think they are actually different spices. So, you know, they make, the tagines have a lot of some sort of slightly savory like cumin and some slightly sweet spices. So I think each one of these, when you get a scoop, it would be a scoop of the spices that you would put into a tagine.
Right, like sort of like a mix of things like curry.
Exactly, it's a mix.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, but laid out in a way that's just so clever.
How do they do it? Yeah.
I know, and you hate to be the first person who asks a man to break down his pile of spices.
Nancy has a question.
Yeah, Nancy.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, now was that just one shot? Did he pose for you, or did you?
This was just one shot. He was just looking very suspicious.
Yeah.
You know, they, for the most part, do not like being photographed, but men just kind of stare at you. Many of the women, even if they've only got eyes showing through their burqas, many of the women will actually cover their faces.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you'll see the women fully covered in their burqas with just eyes showing. And then next to them, there'll be other women in the shortest shorts or, you know, mini skirts you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's just mixed in and going about their business. So it really is this contrast of the traditional with the modern.
Because a lot of them don't wear burqas in Morocco, right?
Right. Some of them are just totally like modern teenagers, younger. Yeah.
Patricia, I wondered if most of your photographs that are in this exhibit, were they handheld?
The ones in Morocco were pretty much all handheld because I didn't take a tripod with me. The ones in Ellis Island, you really have to have a tripod to do that HDR technique because you're doing 3 exposures of the same scene and you really don't want to move the camera. So you need to have the camera down on a tripod. In Morocco, the light was so generally so good, you know, this was like noon, was very bright, so you could get very rapid shutter speeds, and that's fine for hand holding. And then when it was indoors like this one, I just pushed up the ISO, and the Nikon camera I use, it's a D810, has really good high ISO quality, so that even though it's high ISO, meaning you would normally get to see a lot of kind of specks of graininess in it, with a good quality sensor you don't, and so it was fine without using a tripod there. And so the sort of sorry.
I had another technical question. I'm sorry if I interrupted you. If you wanted to continue, I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, what's your next question? I'm just natural.
It has to do with when the images that we see are illuminated because they're on a screen. How do you feel the work compares to when you've printed it as a giclée print?
Actually, I like my colors in the prints better. Now, each one of us is seeing slightly different colors because it depends on our own screen settings. But I do my own printing and I make sure that I get colors that are true to as I remember or imagine I remember the image. So I am very careful to get the colors right when I print. And when I print, they look sharper than they do to me on the screen. You know, there's just a degradation because of I'm now projecting, you know, what's on a screen somewhere else. And so there's a degradation of the sharpness that you wouldn't see in the prints. And so just to say, I've put up sizes, you know, but because I print myself, I can print any size and matted, unmatted, whatever anybody's interested in.
Well, the image that's showing right now is the sunset Isanwara with the blue boat, and it's backlit with the yellow sky.
Right.
And I wondered if when you print that, do you have any difficulty getting the definition that you want with the darker part of the photograph?
No, because I can adjust, if I need to, I can adjust the color in the image for printing. And I can do that locally as well as doing an overall global adjustment. So I make a point of printing so I'm getting detail in the dark areas if I want detail in the dark. You know, and sometimes you want a black with no detail. And then you print so that you get that black. But here I do want the detail in the dark areas, and I can print so that I always get that.
Great, thank you.
Sure. So,
Patricia, do you have a provision in your camera to preview an image in black and white before you take it?
yes.
Do you use that often?
I generally don't. A lot of people who shoot mainly in black and white do.
Mm.
But especially, you know, if you're doing like street shooting like these scenes are, you know, you've got to capture the moment. And so you just grab it when the guy looks at you and you don't stop to change settings much, and you kind of hope that you get what you want.
Right.
And actually with this one, I didn't know that I was going to turn it into black and white. I like the colors, and you know, I can show it. I think it might be on my website in color, but it's just really busy because there's a lot of color in the bottles, the jars around, as well as in the spices.
You already have a lot of pattern in there too. So color and pattern can be noisy.
Yeah, exactly. It's just too much distraction.
And when you're in Morocco, what kind of lens were you using mainly?
I'm sorry?
When you're in Morocco, what kind of lens were you using mainly?
The lens I use mostly is a sort of middle range zoom. I think it goes from 25 to 125, something like that.
Right. Do you just, when you go to Morocco, do you take the one camera?
I did take a backup because having got to Morocco, I didn't want, if something happened to my camera body, I did take a little Sony as a backup, but the Nikon almost all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So, so on the website there, that link goes to my website. So if you're interested in other images, they're there. So is there anything else anybody wants to go back to while we're...
Yeah, we got about 5 minutes left.
Or more, or less.
I came in a little bit late, and I was wondering if Keith could talk about his waves.
Huh?
Keith, you're on Waves.
Thanks.
What about the waves?
I found it really fascinating. It looks like a photograph.
Oh, is it? I'm just trying to see who's asking. Well, it's based on a photograph. I think the guy's takes his pictures in Cyprus mainly, and he really takes great pictures of waves, and he puts them all up on a site called Pixabay, copyright free to use however you want to. So I just really like the way he captures the wave. But other than that, I didn't really adjust it to make anything up. It's just basically trying to reproduce it in paint to some degree, to capture, whatever colors I'm seeing and all that. It's a close-up wave, so it's it's a little different than your usual if you were to pull out and see it from afar. So it's going to show lots of different elements in terms of the colors and the reflections and things like that.
Yeah, a lot of great detail. It's very nice.
I think there's a bottom of the wave. You can sort of see where it's sort of running up against the like maybe the sand or the shore or rocks or something. So it has that kind of an interesting look to it.
And I recognize that voice, Anne. Hi, Anne.
Yeah, that's me.
Hey, I recognize.
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks.
I don't know what else to say about it. It's about 18 by 36, so it's kind of large. Well, not real large, but I don't know.
I just lost folks there. Did you?
Yeah.
I think a couple people left.
Well, I didn't leave, but can you hear me?
Yeah. We can hear you, Mike.
I can't hear. I mean, I can hear all you guys, but all of a sudden, all the video disappeared.
Yeah, it looks like Patricia may have stopped sharing.
Is there a time?
No, what happened was mine crashed.
Oh.
But I think and so Lisa, yours didn't take over.
No, anyway. No, because I had stopped sharing when I handed it to you. Okay. So, but I mean, we're 2 minutes till 5 right now. So.
Oh, here
it's back.
Keith, I want to say two things. One about the waves and one about the ship. I've seen the waves in person when you had it on the gallery wall, and I have to say that whenever I walked by it, I felt wet.
Yeah.
And as to the ship, I used to be a part of a crew member, a part of a crew of the Gazella downtown, which is not quite as large as this and somewhat different rig, but this one looks like if I got a crew together, I'd be able to sail that one that we're seeing right now, off into the sunset.
Right.
It's so realistic looking, and I can see that the rigging and all the lines they look like they all work.
For the most part, yeah. There's a few that I didn't include because it was going to get too crowded.
That's not a sister ship to the Coast Guard's ship, is it? The Eagle?
No, this is a ship in Stockholm.
Yes.
And it was part of the Stockholm Navy for quite some time, and I think they retired it back in the 40s or something like that. So it just sits in the harbor, and now it's like a hostel. They use it as a hostel, so you can like stay there, overnight when you're visiting or whatever in Stockholm. But it was built in 1888, and it sailed around the world for all those years. Even was used in World War II. So there's actually quite a history to it. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I put the name of it on my website.
Is it the official ship of Sweden?
I don't think so. It's just a landmark, I suppose, of some sort. And behind that ship, there's another ship. It's a cruise ship. Called Birka Cruises, which you could catch that up into the different parts of those areas around Norway and whatnot.
Got a question.
He's got another question.
Yeah. So is Mac to physically come in? I know this is the last day of your exhibit of this one, but can you physically go to Mac now, or is it all virtual?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's all virtual. This exhibit is still up on the website. I think any of us, if you're interested in anything, would be willing to meet you at the gallery and show you the piece for, in person, to see if you want to really see what it looks like. Certainly, I don't want to speak for everybody. I would be willing to do that. But the gallery is not formally open at the moment.
And so if you are interested, like Patricia said, if you are interested in any of these pieces, you can email, there you go, info@mediaarts.council.org.
Yeah.
It's right there on our website, and then that'll send an email to our director, and we can make arrangements. If you wanted to see something in person, we just have to arrange it with the artist. And this, everything that's on our website, even after October 4th, you'll still be able to see it and access it and ask questions. It's not going to disappear.
And the next show up is the Photo X, the juried photography exhibition.
There you go.
It'll be up from next week until the end of November anyway. I'm not sure. That might go longer than that. Depends on what's coming next.
And the other thing I wanted to add is that on all my paintings or whatever are not obviously on the MAC website or either in the show. So if you want to see anything else that I might have painted, you can find me on my website, keithwillisart.com, or you can see whatever I post new on Instagram, which I just finished another painting and posted it up on Instagram, Keith Willis Artist. So if you want to see anything that's not represented in the gallery or the show, you can see that there.
If you go to the names of each artist on the gallery website, the individual page for the artist has links to their websites, and Instagram accounts, and so on.
Yeah, he's...
Mine's a bad example because I don't have my own website, but some of the other artists do.
You have Instagram, don't you?
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook, but yeah.
Yeah, but click through here and you'll be able to find us. So we're up here.
Uh-oh, we're getting rowdy downstairs. So I'm going to have to wrap this up.
Thank you.
Good to see you all.
Okay, thank you. Can't wait to see you all in person.
Good work.
Yes, beautiful exhibit. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Congratulations.
Bye.
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 Well done, Zoom.
Thank you. Our first one.
First try.
Woohoo.
Have fun, Lisa.
Bye.
Yeah.